having that zeal to learn, and even on a Sunday, join us as a panelist or as a participant. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, we are live on social media platforms.
Thank you so much, Dr. Satish. And let us start with our academy video, and then we will start with the session. So skilling up, and as a platform exclusively dedicated to the learning and development for the pharmaceutical industry, we bring to you a lot of sessions, and we see a lot of participation also in these sessions from your side. In this domain, we have envisioned the continuing pharma education that we always do, and the team at Pharma State Academy and your suggestions and feedback have motivated us to do so. We do this on the lines of CME itself. So we do it for doctors, but why not for ourselves? So we are here for you doing continuous pharma education for the industry professionals and students. Today, we are bringing you the second discussion on case-based learning series. First one happened in November. And this time we are bringing you a very interesting case study, which has been adapted from Peter Drucker. Can you manage your boss? A very interesting topic. And that is why a very interesting panel also today for the case study, a panel with pharma veterans who will discuss the case study and give us insights on what is going right, wrong, or what maybe nothing is wrong in this world, but what is going on in that case study. So, before starting the session itself, the panelists do not need an introduction today, but still I'll take some time and just few introductory words about the panelists who are today with us on the case study session. Can you manage your boss? We have today with us Mr. Ajay Bhatt, President, Global Human Resources in TAS Pharmaceuticals. He is a global HR leader with rich experience of leading and driving change, acceleration and integration in large, complex, and fast-growing organizations, excellent track record of 18 plus years or more as HR leader for top global and Indian MNCs. He has expertise in developing and delivering change management programs, including talent strategy, Salesforce transformation, greenfield setups, strategic employee relations management, organization restructuring and downsizing. He was earlier with the Abbott as Director of Human Resources, Innovation and Development, and he has worked with with few more pharmaceutical companies in the roles of Human Resources Manager, with Torrent, with Zydus and Sun Pharma. He has strong leadership capabilities of visioning and developing paths to achieve them. He leads from front and has strong business acumen. His strong analytical capabilities coupled with out-of-box solutions to complex problems has earned him respect, not among only his colleagues, but peers in the pharma industry. Also, welcome, Mr. Ajay Bhatt. The next panelist that we have today is Mr. Sachin Bodawala. Most of us know him. He is the former Director, Business Excellence, Go-to-Market and International Business at BI. He is an expert in these sales management, go-to-market strategy, business excellence, and international business. He's a leader who leads from the front, someone who is at ease on the field and equally at ease in developing strategy. A pharma veteran with close to 40 years of experience in pharma, he has managed diverse teams which drive data analytics, insights, digital marketing to support different business units, both in human pharma and animal health. He has managed businesses across acute and chronic, communicable, non-communicable, private as well as public markets and help build and develop profitable business from scratch. He worked with Pfizer for close to 18 years in various senior roles in sales and international business earlier. Welcome, Mr. Sachin Borawala.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Dr. Swati, for the generous introduction.
Thank you. And the third panelist today we have is Mr. Ajay Vaishampayan. His experience will be of very much value today because he comes from background, out of the box backgrounds for pharma industry. So he is currently Vice President HR at Ultratech Cement Limited. And he was earlier with Baxter Pharmaceuticals India Private Limited. And he joined there as Associate Vice President HR. He was heading HR of 3 plants for 2,500 plus employees. Well, he has also worked in various HR roles at Kalpataru Power Transmission Limited, Phoenix Construction Technologies, and Proflex Systems at Suzlon Energy Limited. So his perspective will give us a lot of insights from other industry perspectives also, how HR thing is looked in. He's an HR professional with 25 plus years of experience in the areas of human resource management with renowned Indian and multinational organizations across diverse industries, expertise in driving strategic HR initiatives, timely interventions to realize the bottom line results. He is designing and defining HR processes and policies to align with the objective and goals of the organization. Welcome, Mr. Ajay Vaishampayan.
Thank you, Dr. Swati, for nice introduction.
It's a pleasure hosting the panelists today. And along with the esteemed panel that we have Mr. Vivek, whom we all know, mentoring us for almost close to 3 years now, and well known for his thoughts and leadership abilities. And we will have Vivek's inputs also. Vivek, sir, do you want to say something before I start with the case today?
No, I straight away hand it over to you. I'll speak a few words a little later.
Sure. So, okay, 200 plus. Thank you so much for joining. Now what I'm going to do, dear participants, we created WhatsApp groups and sent you the case study through mails and WhatsApp group also. I hope most of you have gone through that case study, but still, for the benefit of the audience and everyone who is watching this session, I will quickly go through this case study and let us see the major points that were there in the case study. And then we will move to discussions and questions. So please focus here. There is a poll which will happen at the end of the session also. And there was a poll which we posted before the session also. So we will have results from both the polls. So over to the learning phase now. Please stay focused. Please listen to the salient points which were there in the case studies. The topic is, can you manage a boss? The characters in this case study are 3 major characters here. Mr. Vinod Thatte, he is Vice President Manufacturing. Mr. Sridhar Rao, the plant in charge, and Mr. Frank Lobo, the plant manager. The story revolves around, this case revolves around these 3 characters. Well, Sridhar Rao was working for 4 years under Mr. Vinod Thatte. So Vinod Thatte is the Vice President Manufacturing and Mr. Sridhar Rao has been working under him. But Vinod was a pain in every part of Sridhar's body from top to toe. Never an encouraging word, only grunts or criticism. So the boss here, Mr. Vinod Thatte, always criticized Mr. Sridhar, and that was a pain for Mr. Sridhar. The boss was also repulsive and discourteous to Sridhar at every stage. And the boss always acted as if Mr. Sridhar had broken all 10 commandments of the organization whenever they met. So the vibe here is repulsion between the boss and the subordinate here. So Mr. Vinod Thatte and Sridhar Rao do not see eye in eye here. Let us see the qualifications of the two personalities involved in this case study. Mr. Sridhar Rao, who is a plant in charge, has an educational background of BTech in ME, Mechanical Engineering, IIT Bombay, and Executive MBA from IIM Ahmedabad. His expertise, he is highly qualified and eager to learn more. And one point which is worth mentioning here is he considered Mr. Vinod as an illiterate. And why? Because the Vice President Manufacturing, Vinod Thatte, the education was class 11th passed out. And the experience he had was he worked in Indian Army and joined as mechanic in the company and then rose up. So I hope I am clear about the qualifications that we are mentioning here in the case study. Mr. Sridhar, as usual, everyone would know he felt humiliated and decided to leave company. So people do make those decisions, and he felt humiliated, decided. And since he was highly qualified, he had little difficulty in finding a new job. So he found something new. The new company for Mr. Sridhar Rao was a highly technological one. And so Sridhar's management science was fully appreciated. The academia and the training that he had gone through, that was utilized in this new company. And Sridhar was now the one who felt somewhat undereducated, since so many of his new associates in the new company had PhDs. So now Sridhar feels, I think, an eagerness to learn also, because he is now among the academic equals. And what happens? This is the comment which Mr. Vinod Thatte made when Sridhar announced his resignation. I won't try to talk you out of it. I have to tell you, Rao, that I could not and would not have recommended you for a promotion. Your leaving makes it much easier for all of us. So here's another repulsive comment that Mr. Vinod gave when he left the company. Mr. Sridhar left the company. What happened after that in the company? Mr. Frank Lobo succeeded Sridhar. Frank Lobo was a plant manager, and his selection surprised Sridhar. Why? So Sridhar had been sure Vinod, the Vice President Manufacturing, would have picked the oldest and most conventional of his 4 plant managers, but he chose Frank Lobo. And Frank Lobo was the youngest and well under 40 and the most innovative and boldest. So here is something which Sridhar could not understand, that why Mr. Vinod chose Frank Lobo at his position. What was the qualification for Mr. Frank Lobo? Frank Lobo had been plant manager for only a few years, and Sridhar doubted whether he was really ready yet. So Sridhar was confused here why Frank Lobo was promoted. Sridhar had gotten along fairly well with Frank Lobo, but did not consider himself close to the man. So he knew the man, but not very close, as he mentions here. So he was surprised, as I already mentioned. Sridhar was surprised that Frank Lobo was succeeding him. What happened after that? Sridhar spent an hour or 2 discussing the plants and their managers, but was more specific. So there was always a discussion going to happen when he was leaving. So there was a discussion, and Sridhar told Mr. Frank on the Vinod's toxic behavior and micromanagement. This is what he told Mr. Frank about during his resignation. And then Sridhar Rao, he became former plant in charge at that company. That means he joined the new company and forgot all about his old company. The new job kept him fully occupied. He simply forgot about it. He was quite surprised to read 3 years later. So 3 years have passed, and in a business magazine, he read that the company promoted Mr. Frank Lobo as VP manufacturing, and Mr. Vinod, whom he repulsed earlier, was further promoted. I hope I'm going quite okay, not fast, not slow. So Sridhar wanted to meet and congratulate Frank Lobo. After 3 years, he saw there is a promotion and whatever happened in the company. He wanted to meet, but when he got back home, he found that Frank Lobo had anticipated him, and on the hall table was a huge flower pot with a handwritten note from Frank Lobo. And what that note mentions. Let us read it out twice. Dear Sridhar Rao, you will have heard that I have been promoted to VP Manufacturing, and I owe it all to you and want to say thank you. You have taught me that I had to learn to manage the boss, and you told me how to do it. Cordially, Frank Lobo. I'm reading it twice. What is the note that Mr. Frank Lobo left for Mr. Sridhar? Dear Sridhar, you will have heard that I have been promoted to VP Manufacturing. I owe it all to you and want to say thank you. You have taught me that I had to learn to manage the boss, and you told me how to do it. Cordially, Frank Lobo. And here comes the questions. Let's put on our thinking caps. Vivek sir, it is over to you and the panelists from here.
Yeah. So can you
Sure, sir.
leave the slideshow?
Yeah.
So good morning, everyone. Have you heard about Dr. Srikant Datar? He's an Indian and he's currently the dean at Harvard Business School. Just after Diwali this year, my friend Pawan Kulkarni sent me a YouTube post of Dean Srikant Datar. It said that in 2021-22 academic year, the 100-year anniversary of the introduction of the case method at Harvard Business School. And this to me is the most enduring learning and development method. Case method is the most enduring L&D method. Immediately we at Pharma State picked this up and we had our first case method in the last week of November. Our dream is to have 4 to 6 sessions by the end of December 2022. Not just that, at Pharma State Academy, all L&D programs, we incorporate case methods. Today, we have a repository of close to 75 case studies, most of them from our real life experiences. The current case study, Managing Boss, has been adopted from Peter Drucker. How to develop mutually rewarding working relationship with a person who is above you in the organizational chart. We shall be adopting now the round robin method for questions. We shall be adopting the round robin method for the questions. There are a series of 3 to 4 questions which I'll be asking to everyone. And starting with the alphabetical name, AB Ajay Bhatt, AV Ajay Vaishampan, and then SB Sachin Puriwala. And after that, we'll take up the questions for review and we'll also have the audience poll. So my first question to Ajay Bhatt, can you please tell the dumbfounded Sridhar Rao what Frank Lobo actually meant? Can you tell the dumbfounded Sridhar Rao what exactly Frank Lobo meant?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
So first of all, good morning, Mr. Atangadi and Dr. Swati Sinha. Thank you very much. Really appreciate Pharma State Academy inviting all of us to give our opinion on the case study or give our share our learnings. I very strongly believe that it is going to be a two-way traffic. I look forward to also learning from my co-colleagues on the panel, including you. You have been a great mentor for many of us throughout our career, and many other colleagues who have already joined. Before I start responding about what Frank Lobo meant, I would suggest that when you say managing your boss, I possibly would look at is that how do I manage myself? If we shift the locus of control to self and learn to adapt and support the objectives of our organization or a boss, I think that brings in a much more transparent, candid, and supportive relationship. So possibly in this particular topic also, if you look at it, what is Frank Lobo Frank trying to tell Sridhar when he said thank you and when he sent that particular note? I think Frank is Sridhar, with all his experiences, before Frank was taking on the job, when he briefed Frank, he actually gave him a lot of heads up to be prepared and adapt to the styles which are expected. Adapt to the positives and adapt to not so positives, both good and bad. Possibly that ability to adapt that earlier advance information and coaching to be ready to adapt was one of the best thing which Frank got from Sridhar. And because he was ready to adapt, he went with a clean slate. He possibly would have developed a better relationship with his boss, and he possibly would have developed more better candid conversation. And that possibly would have led him to be having a very different relationship, because it's not written in the case study, but I am now assuming, because he was promoted also later, and the boss was also promoted later. So I assume in the next 2-3 years, they would have really had a fruitful relationship, which worked very well. And that is all summation is what Frank is trying to give a feedback back to Sridhar. Thank you very much, but happy to learn from others. Thank you.
Wow, Ajay bhai. Absolutely, you have hit the nail on the head. I would now ask this some question to Ajay Vaishnav.
Thank you, Mr. Hatangadi. And first of all, my sincere thanks to, I would say, Pharma State Academy, and being invited for such a nice topic, which is, I would say, touching to all working professionals. And when we talk about the topic, can you manage your boss, right? Which is really, I would say that, yes, if you manage yourself first, which my panel colleague, Mr. Ajay Bhatt says, which really reflects your, I would say, communication, connect, and commitment. That is one. And second part, first, we need to listen to understand what your boss is saying, rather than listen to reply. That is a key. When we talk about connect, if you are well connected, then the battle would be different. But here, when we go to the case study, why there was a different approach between Mr. Frank Lobo and Mr. Sridhar Rao? Because Frank was, when he met Mr. Sridhar Rao, he understood what exactly going on at the plant. And he understood the real relationship and real issues which were prevailing during that particular time. So he understood thoroughly, and he adopted rightly the discussion between Mr. Frank and Sridhar. And then accordingly, time to time, he apply to manage the boss. That's what my submission is.
Over to Sachin.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Ratangadi, and thanks to Pharma State Academy for this opportunity of discussing a important aspect of each one of our lives. We all have bosses, and we all need to manage a relationship with a boss from time to time. The two experts here from HR, and possibly I am the generalist around here, and I would like to maybe let me say I agree actually with both of them, what they have stated. Maybe in a different context, let me put it in what dumbfounded possibly Sridhar is his capability to not see what Frank Lobo is able to see. Okay, all what Sridhar Rao has stated actually is maybe, while it has been put in a negative manner, actually it has been put in traits actually which according to him has been identified as what our challenges. The Frank has seen it as a diagnosis actually of the situation, and adapted. It has been flexible enough, maybe versatile enough to manage those very traits actually in a much more effective manner. And that is the reason why actually Sridhar Rao does not understand what is it that I conveyed that helped Frank Lobo manage the situation. The fact is that Sridhar Rao did a great diagnosis, but he has no versatility to manage his own findings. So that's the first piece, actually. And to give you a small example, actually, look at what Sridhar Rao mentions. He will bite your head off if you don't keep him informed. Now, while it is stated negatively, actually, the obvious interpretation of that statement would be that there is a manager who wants to have continuous feedback, actually, or understanding of what is the situation. So, and this is precisely actually what Sridhar Rao has not been able to understand, that what is it that I conveyed. Okay.
Thank you, Sachin. And there are a few points which are coming very strongly. And both of them said, both the Ajay said, yes, you must manage yourself extremely well. Before trying to manage your boss, you must first try to manage myself. Ajay Vaishampar also made a very, very, very important point. Listen to what the boss says. Can I add one more point? Also look at his body language and his feelings and his eyes and try to listen what has not been said. Apart from listening to what has been said, we at this level should have the capability also listen what hasn't been said. What do you say, Ajay Vaishampar, on this?
So, Mr. Vivek, generally, what I have learned as well as experience, because boss and subordinate is such a sensitive relationship, right? Because we all must have experienced in our working profession since years. So, some point of time, what my views on this particular subject is, you need to build a trust, because trust is such a strong factor, and you need to build a partnership also. When you talk about trust and partnership, which makes a life easier to your boss, because certain unsaid thing which you rightly prompted, which you understand, because you have built that kind of trust between you and him. And some point of time, at a starting phase, when you are working with your boss, your connect is very, very important, because once you are connect, then you can also convey what are your thoughts, what are your, I would say, perspective, what you are trying to say. And then once you have connect, once you convey, then only you can convince. At some point of time, we do not listen to understand. Again, I would repeat the same sentence, and we listen to reply. So that, I would say, trait, it is a very, very important trait that we all need to apply as well as
very
learn.
good, very good, very good. Excellent point you made, sir. Excellent point. My question to Ajay on this, some question on this. I felt I may be wrong, and I would like you to correct me, whether Frank Lobo had a better EQ as compared to Sridhar. And does this entire case study is related to the EQ of both these people?
Ajay is me or Ajay we?
Ajay Bhatt. Ajay Bhatt.
Okay, thank you. No, actually, when Ajay was speaking about the need to be empathetic and listen, I had the same thought in my mind. Is here is where we have to look at the balance between what is the IQ and EQ. To me, I think in this particular case, the gentleman surely has a better IQ, because you look at his education background. But he could have had helped himself better if he would have had to improve his EQ part also. Look at the background of both these gentlemen. I mean, the way it has been introduced. The boss has come from armed forces background, not educated, but very experienced. I mean, from somebody who's 11 plus army background and then to come up to this level, would not be happening without any hard work, without any success, correct? But possibly his way of success and his criteria of success or his criteria of getting things done were much different than what Sridhar was having. Sridhar's way of looking was different. As Ajay V says, that I think an open conversation between both of them, and the initiative had to be taken by Sridhar, would have to help Sridhar also to listen in terms of what the bosses require, what his manager is wanting, and how it's to be happen. To me, EQ in any relationship is as equally important as IQ, and sometimes better EQ balance is much better on a longer term than IQ. I'm not saying that you should not be intelligent. You should be, because that's the requirement. IQ is a minimum minimum basic requirement to me. As you grow in your life to manage more and more team members, you will have to remember that you should be first a better follower, a better team member. Then you will be accepted as a better leader. And that's where the EQ comes in. And that's where you appreciate your own life learning. You appreciate somebody else's life learning. They have a different point of view. I'm sure you would have heard about something called Gestalt, very old psychologist. He very strongly proposed that when you interact, you need to look at the totality of world of that particular individual. I'm talking from social casework method. But that's a very important principle. If we start applying our own framework to somebody else, then we make the mistake of misjudging somebody. Absolutely. But if we try to understand his framework, possibly that better IQ will prevail. Sorry, I went a little bit longer.
No, it's okay. Perfectly okay. There's no problem. My last question to Sachin on this is, why was he a micromanager to Sridhar, but not with Frank Lobo?
So this is again, when one looks at the case study per se, actually one needs to understand the relevant information which is available over there. Sridhar Rao is happy creating reports. Okay, he has a first boss which has drilled in him to go and give him every day morning a status update, actually from 8:30 on, which he continues to observe even when the new manager, which he actually has to deal with, and he believes that this is the right way to do things. Many of us actually have a profound impact in our lives with the first boss. Okay, and it is very difficult to not compare any of the subsequent managers which we which we have to have relationship with our first boss. And this is something which a senior manager like Sridhar should have at least understood, that while there is a possibility to compare, there is also a necessity to understand what the new manager actually, or Vinod Thatte, brings on the table. Actually. So this is the first aspect. He expects him to give him a status update, or maybe keep him informed, especially of the bad news. But he doesn't actually really want him to give him a day-to-day update the way Sridhar is used to. He doesn't want him to get reports. Okay, that's the first aspect, actually.
Absolutely.
The second aspect is that while he spends humongous amount of time in terms of creation of new strategy, new plans, he believes that this is something which is not worth sharing, because all the paperwork which he has done is not going to see the light of the day, because the manager is not likely to go through, actually. So which again is contrary to his understanding about what Vinod Thatte is, because what he chose as a person was Frank Lobo, who was the most innovative, youngest. If it would have been the case where he would have not appreciated innovation or people who would actually bring in newness to the job, then he would have not chosen Frank Lobo. So there is quite a bit of a disconnect in between, or the misconceptions which Sridhar Rao carries, and he has chosen to keep that in his mind. Another misconception which he has is that he is valued for his job, but when he goes and talks actually to Vinod Thatte almost actually tells him that I would have never promoted you. You are not a regrettable loss. Okay. So again, very big disconnect in between what he brings in on the table. And so I still believe that it is his misconception about micromanagement, while actually the fact is that Vinod Thatte wants him to share with him bad news from much before time. He doesn't expect him to come in and deliver on a day-to-day basis, every morning a status update actually, and give him a report. That's how the manager is.
This is a question which I'd like to ask any one of you. Do you think it was the lack of transparency between Vinod Thatte and Sridhar Rao which led to all these problems? Anyone can be free to answer.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I'm just taking a lead and maybe very quickly. See here, this case study is a good opportunity for both, for a team member and a team leader, to learn from both behaviors. So I know while we are trying to make sure the Sridhar's boss as a person who is a little bit negative, there's an opportunity, according to me, to see that both of us, the follower and the leader, learn out of it. And in your question, in response to your question, whether there was a transparency or not in the relationship, no, it was not there. I mean, both had a different point of view, and both were behaving in a different ways, leading to a vicious cycle of mutual disrespect, mutual lack of trust, and that possibly has led to non-collaborative environment where where Sridhar thinks that even if he makes this beautiful report of some innovation, it's not going to be appreciated and accepted, and he never took an opportunity even to share. On the part of his boss, when he's leaving, he's saying you are useless. So that it's the quality of conversation itself shows that there was a basic lack of transparency, disrespect among each other, and that led to a very non-collaborative work environment. And it goes to both of them. It's no single party. You clap with both hands. And my learning from this case study is that you have to be, in order to be a better leader, you have to first be a better follower. And in order to be a better leader, you should always be empathetic and be open to your team members' questions, comments, suggestions, and whatever it is. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ajay Bhatt.
I think I would like to add a little bit to this information, and I'll go back to what Mr. Ajay Bhatt said earlier. And if you remember, he said that the initiative needs to be taken by Sridhar Rao. Okay, and I certainly believe that while there is a negative connotation actually which we always have to managing the boss, and we tend to believe that that means polishing, or that means actually having a relationship built for personal gains. Actually, the fact is that the organization pays a very heavy price if the manager and the subordinate do not have a great relationship. I can think about a person who is himself managing people and then also has a boss whom he cannot manage. The impact is not only on the organization, but his own team also. He's not able to sell how his team members are. He will not be able to deliver to his team members actually what he wants. So I would say that this lack of trust might be something which is built over a period of time in between these two, but the initiative or the responsibility of building this trust lies on Sridhar Rao. Actually, not as much on Vinod Thatte. While I'm not saying that Vinod Thatte should not have an EQ, he should not be open to, but I would still say that a larger responsibility still lies on Sridhar Rao to manage here.
Okay. Absolutely right. As you said a little while earlier, building trust and partnership is something which is very, very, very important. And I agree. I can't agree more than that. It's a beautiful sentence you made. There should be a good relation. There should be trust between the subordinate and the higher up. When Frank Lobo wrote to Sridhar, "Dear Sridhar Rao, you have heard that I have been promoted to VP Manufacturing, and I owe it all to you and want to say thank you." You have taught me that I can learn to manage the boss. And you told me how to do it. Cordially, Frank Lobo. What are your thoughts on this, Ajay Bhatt? And then over to Ajay Vaishampian, and then panel to Sashi. When Frank Lobo wrote to Sridhar, dear Sridhar Rao, you have heard that I have been promoted to VP Manufacturing and I owe it all to you. And what you want to say, thank you. You have taught me that I had to learn to manage the boss. And you told me how to do it. Cordially, Frank Lobo. So what are your thoughts on this?
Thank you. Very provoking question. And thank you very much. But see, in the case study itself, if you, I'm sure we have gone through that, the kind of comments which Sridhar makes for his boss when he spoke to Frank Lobo. He says, he doesn't read a line. You might as well write on water. Okay. Never as a word of praise. Quick to criticize.
True.
Inform you ahead of time, anything is unexpected. Yet he bites off your head. Don't dare to propose any change. Won't be able to. So I think if when Frank Lobo is writing him thank you, Frank Lobo possibly had a better EQ along with IQ, and he took the very essence of what each of these negative connotations meant, and he possibly and the reason why he's telling him thank you is because by sharing this very transparently, which is one thing good he did, instead of being rosy about it, when he has given his input, Frank has taken that input possibly and then turned it heads on in terms of how to adapt and how to anticipate what his boss is requiring. Possibly Frank would have had a very open conversation with him, set up a new ground rule, set up relationship. And to my mind, the way it is not very clearly coming out in this, but I anticipate that Frank was a better executioner and delivery rather than putting only reports. So he picked up each of these things and said, okay, if I was now in this place, what I'm going to do, and possibly he would have turned it around, set this conversation and helped his manager to deliver better. Maybe he had a better relationship, which shows because he got promoted in next 4 years of time as a replacement. To me, that is all where Frank Lobo is coming back and saying thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ajay. You have made a very, very, very important friend. Frank Lobo was a better executioner than Sridhar Rao. It's a very, very valid point. What do you have to say on this question, Ajay Vaishampian, about the thank you letter from Frank Lobo?
Yeah. So when I've gone through the study, this particular case study in detail, couple of points which came into my mind when Sridhar met Mr. Frank Lobo, and exactly he narrated what incidences happened during his tenure and when he decided to hand over to Mr. Frank Lobo. So this transition period, which was very, very important, Mr. Frank Lobo to understand, because he has to start his new game. I would say that. Why I'm using a word game? Because when he has been promoted with some specific expectation. So what Frank must have done, Frank must have sat across with Mr. Thatte, understand his needs, his concerns, and basically his interest. Because if these three he would have been communicated and understand from Mr. Thatte, that could have built a better trust and relationship between first two, because that was the first key to start this particular relationship between boss and subordinate. Rest come later, which Mr. Rao could have done it, but because of some XYZ reason between Mr. Rao and Mr. Thatte in their past journey, Mr. Rao could not build that. And that exactly essence Mr. Lobo picked up and applied. I rightly agree with Mr. Ajay Bhatt that Mr. Lobo had a very good EQ along with IQ, right? Where Mr. Rao must have a good IQ but less on EQ. And looking to a current scenario, if we really embrace upon, then nowadays EQ is equally important along with IQ, because the scenario has changed. People's perspectives are changed, people's understandings are changed, people's beliefs have changed. So to again, when you managing your boss, right, your EQ plays a vital role, right? And somewhere you need to understand and acknowledge the expectations of boss also, because some point of time we are so much engrossed ourselves in delivery where we do not acknowledge or understand, we miss the interest. And rightly Mr. Lobo definitely decided which battle to fight, right? I'm using battle word because certain things what Mr. Lobo would have understand and set a clarity between Mr. Thatte and Mr. Lobo that this many things I would do 100% and with thorough execution, and certain things which I am new to this plan, you need to guide me. So this is my submission.
In fact, Ajay Vaishpandi made a very, very, very important point. And as a hardcore brand manager, as a brand coach, in my heart, I'm still a brand manager, as a product manager, as they call in the industry. You have communicated a very useful message to all the brand managers who are listening. You have conveyed a beautiful message to all the brand managers who are also in this audience. And that message is understand the needs of the customer. And for here, in this case study, the customer to both was Sridhar Rao. Was Vinod Thatte.
Yeah.
He understood the needs of Vinod Thatte, while the earlier one, Sridhar Rao, did not. But Frank Lobo completely understood the needs of Sridhar Rao. I would say of Vinod Thatte. You brought a very, very beautiful point. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
now
Mr.
the same question about the thank you letter to Sachin.
So let me reiterate and maybe all the three of you what you have said, okay, and maybe give my point of view. One first is actually what Mr. Ajay Bhatt said, that there is a limited information from the case study actually whether he was a great executioner. Something he did actually we obviously can understand whether he had a better EQ, whether he had a better execution capability actually, but he went on to ultimately understand what needs to be done. The second aspect is that second Mr. Ajay said, actually, for me to pronounce your second name would be a little difficult. So I will not try that. What you said is he knows the battle, okay, and the battle was very clearly stated in, again, the feedback given by Sridhar Rao to Frank Lobo that everything else is fine. Actually, the plants are working fine. You know, there are very small issues around there, and people who are managing are good people. Okay, so on that front, he clearly stated, and he said that, but the problem is the boss. Okay, and he uses an abusive word actually to explain what the boss is all about. And the fact is that possibly that made him understand that while there is not much of a battle in terms of managing business or managing teams, actually it is more of a situation where you have to manage a relationship with your own boss. So he worked out his battle perfectly right. And let me say the third thing what Mr. Hattangadi said. Actually, like you, I'm associated with brands forever. And let me put it in a different perspective. Actually, that we say that an objection actually is a negatively stated need. Okay, and when you say so many negative traits, actually, whether say for a brand, when you say that your drug does not work fast enough, actually has a very slow onset of action. What your customer is telling you is that I want a drug which has a fast onset of action. Okay, and here actually most of the negatively stated needs, whether he doesn't read a report. Okay, which the interpretation would be that spending time in exhaustive reports is not going to help. Maybe a one A4 page actually small report is going to work, or maybe a face-to-face interaction with giving a download would work better. So I'm saying most of the aspects were stated by Sridhar Rao in a negative manner, but they are needs which are stated for Vinod Thatte, and which the needs have been addressed.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sachin. It's a very, very, very interesting discussion going on. And I come to the last question now. Ajay Bhatt, if you were Sridhar Rao, what would you have done? Now, after listening to all these discussions.
Thank you. I know you're not putting me on a spot, but it's a definitely very thought-provoking question. Before I answer, I would thank all my managers. In throughout my growing in my career, nearly all my managers who I worked with, or the seniors, my customers, my client group customers I worked with, they have ensured that they took on themselves a lot of trust building, a lot of conversations, showing me and guiding me what are the important objectives, do's and don'ts. If I was in a habit of writing long reports, somebody would have said, don't do that, send me one pager. And to your point, there were managers who would say, don't bother about sending long emails, just talk to me or send me a WhatsApp message, and we were fine. So I have been very lucky that I was not Sridhar Rao, and I had good Vinod Thattes in my life, and they raised me to what, and they taught me a lot of good things in terms of how to be a better team member and how to be a better leader also. So that's a good part of, and I thank all of them, including you, Mr. Tangadi. I think I had a pleasure and opportunity of working with you and learning great things about you, including your first product, that is Alprazolam, which you really created one of the most wonderful product marketing, and you taught many things taught a lot of things to us. So thank you very much. Okay, now coming to your question, if I were Sridhar Rao, I think again I'll go back to what I'm saying, that the onus is on me at any point of whether you are a leader or whether you are a team member. I believe very strongly that possibly Sridhar could have done better by having a very open conversation with his boss, Mr. Vinod Thatte, trying to understand what is his objective, what does he want to achieve, and how does he want to achieve that. What and how both are very, very important. Sometimes we spend a lot of time to understand what, but do not understand how part of it. And the how was the how possibly was don't give me long reports. Possibly give Mr. Vinod Thatte was from armed forces. So man of action rather than man of leading lengthy reports. Maybe that background. So maybe he could have face-to-face conversations and set objectives, how part of it. He could have had done better in setting up mutual goals. What was Mr. Thatte's goal and how he would like to achieve it? Define the expectations in terms of, again, the how part of the process. And there was an opportunity for periodically doing some kind of rain check, which happens in any relationship. You cannot assume that if you begin the year with your team member and subordinate in level 1 or level 10 or level 5 of your relationship, it is going to remain that way. It will go up and down. There are different, you and your team member both are going through different set of experiences among yourself, external to world, in your work environment. The business priorities will be changing continuously. There are a lot of games which will be changing, or battles to for the boss also to keep on changing, because he also is accountable to somebody who is accountable to somebody. So there are a lot of changes which will continuously happen, and that will impact the relationship also. And it's good once in a while to do this, sit down with the manager and have those periodic conversations, just to time to have to understand, hey, we both are, am I still understanding you better? Am I still online, or you want me to do something differently? I would also suggest that it would be a good opportunity, and that's what my managers have done with me, is they have taken a lot of time of sitting down and hand-holding me and coaching, which as of right now also my directors are doing for me. So learning and being part of it, being a leader, does not mean that you are not a follower, because you still report to somebody who reports to somebody who reports to somebody. So I would say it would be good for both the manager and the team member to take ownership and initiative in setting up those times and doing some periodic checking, having those conversations. That will build trust. That will build respect. And then you see the collaborative efforts really fructify. And that is where it helps the organization to better. All good organizations have good managers and good leaders. And you see that those teams work wonderfully well together. So that's my take on it. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Thanks.
Thank you, Ajay. And now on to Ajay Vaishampayar, the same question. What would you have done if you were Sridhar Rao?
Thank you, Mr. Vivek. When we talk about, or when we really go through the role of Mr. Rao, right? As we all are working professional, we might have seen a lot of Mr. Thatte, Mr. Rao, and Mr. Lobo in current scenario also, right? And in previous experiences also. So first of all, if I would have been Sridhar Rao, right? First and foremost, when we talk about Mr. Rao, which he could not handle what Vinod was expecting, as rightly Mr. Bhatt has said. Definitely, he would have understand first the need and the requirement of Mr. Vinod Thatte. That is number one. Mr. Rao should have observed the pattern of working of Mr. Thatte, because that is very, very important, because he was from an armed force background. So they believe in command, they believe in order. But again, how to take those way of working, or if you would have observed the pattern of any of your bosses, then which really gives you a reflection while you do the act. And that's the key, what I understand. Then he could have definitely added the value for the growth of Mr. Thatte, right? Because he had a habit of making reports, and he being a good on an IQ, definitely his way of working was to go more in detailing or in micro, where Mr. Thatte's expectation was really short, crisp, and object oriented. And the last is basically, how can I make a difference for growing Mr. Thatte, right? That piece, if you would have understood, the things would have been different. There was no point to call Mr. Lobo to replace Mr. Rao. Right? Because that was very, very important point.
Absolutely.
Right. And somewhere, as rightly Mr. Shashin also said, that scenarios change time to time. Right. And as an individual, as a subordinate, we need to understand, because when we are working in hierarchy, the I would say that hierarchy we need to follow, because ultimately you are reporting to someone, and that boss also reports to someone. So how to add a value for an organization, as well as for, I would say, growth and accomplishment of your boss, that is an important, I would say, understanding of every subordinates. That's my take on this.
In fact, Ajay Vaishambyan, I also have a feeling now when I'm listening to you that probably you would have been a very, very, very successful man, even brand management.
Thank you, Mr. Lobo.
And over to Sachin for the same question. What would you have done if you were Sridhar Rao?
Yeah, so I would try to add only what is missed out, because we'll quickly run out of time. So first and foremost, actually, they have both the Ajays have really comprehensively covered actually what is required over here. The only aspect which I thought is that there is a preconceived, there is no respect from the relationship from the very beginning, and which we've talked about. Okay, the fact is that there is and even before joining the other company, the person has a belief that he is undereducated, or and there are people. So there is so much of importance given to education over here that he's not able to see actually any kind of connect in between him and Vinod Thatte, and that is the reason why there is a lack of respect. Okay, so and tremendous lack of respect to start with, which makes him believe that anything which Vinod Thatte brings on the table is not worth considering. Okay, so which is the first aspect. Now, this if you reverse it actually, and if you believe that you're in a senior position, if he is supposed to supervise you, it would be worthwhile to understand that he has the ability and the capability to manage me actually, and give him that due respect actually, and understand that possibly he is wiser than me in many aspects, which if that would have been the starting point for Sridhar, it would have been better. Okay, because organizations do not make such gross mistakes where people who are in senior positions are not worthy of managing. Okay, you should have given him that room. Okay, so that's the first thing which I said. The second one is actually there is a preconceived notion about his being greatly able. I think it would have the conversations with Vinod Thatte, actually Sridhar Rao, if I would have been there, I would have gone and talked to him and tried to take a feedback how he values me, whether there is a necessity of putting an individual development plan for me, actually, where I need to address some of the challenges which I have. Maybe instead of Frank Lobo growing, and I would have grown into that position of a vice president at some point of time. So if I would have managed this relationship in a better manner, the same Vinod Thatte would have become a resource for me for managing my career, rather than actually I ensure that I do not consider him as a resource. Okay, and which is something which I would have certainly done. I would have not given up on my boss the first visit I met him. Okay.
Thank you so much, Sachin. Thank you. And before I hand over the session back to Swati, I would like to say that if Peter Drucker is listening to this entire episode today, somewhere from heaven, he would be a very, very, very satisfied mind to see such a high quality discussion. Thank you, everyone. And from my point of view, there are three things which I have learned, three take-home points. One is transparency and building a collaborative relation between the boss and the subordinate. The second, boss is your customer and we should know his needs. And the third take-home point for me is everyone, as Ajay has rightly said, EQ is very, very, very important. EQ quotient, high EQ is very, 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 very important. Thank you, all the four panelists. I now hand over to Dr. Swati Sinha.
Thank you, Vivek sir, and thank you, dear panelists, for an engrossing session. I was completely engrossed, and now I'm looking at the time that we have overshot the scheduled time. So before moving ahead, I will take your permission. Can we continue for 10 minutes more and show the poll results and take one or two questions? So I need your permission, Ajay sir, Ajay Bhatt, Ajay Vaishampyam, thank you, and Mr. Sachin, to continue the discussion for another 10 to 15 minutes. If Swati, there are,
it will be a pleasure.
Fine with
yeah,
me.
sure. Go ahead.
We
are support, and it will be a pleasure to learn from some of our colleagues also. So instead of questions, if they have an opinion also, they should certainly share it. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you so much, Ajay Bhatt sir. And it was very engrossing. I'm going to go back to this recording time and again to understand the perspectives. So before moving ahead, let us see the poll results. Satish, can we run the poll? Since all of us has gone through the case study.
Yeah, Swati, we have a poll. So should we go for the poll first or poll results first?
No, we'll first go to the poll.
Poll, please. Yeah.
They should not be impressed by the poll results.
Yeah, broadcast the poll.
So I'm broadcasting the poll.
Dear participants, please engage in this poll. Give us your answers.
Yeah, Dr. Swati, you can read the poll once.
Just a second. My polling session is coming inactive. Can you read, Satish?
Okay, done. I think the polls are I think the case study discussion was so good that everyone understood. So a lot of answers, the polls are coming. Okay, great. Right now we have around 200 plus participants. We got around 120 plus responses.
Oh,
please participate. Yes, yes. After this discussion,
it's increasing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really going well. Please participate.
Wow, close to 150 now.
Yeah. So, sir, let us just close this first poll. We have crossed around 1 minute. So I'm ending the poll.
Another 15 seconds and then we close.
Okay, sure, sir.
Yeah, Ajay. Yes, we can close the polls.
Sure, sir. I'm ending the poll and showing the result now. So here is the result. Can you see? Yeah, is the result visible?
Yeah. 80% yes, 13% no, and 12%, 8% can't say.
Okay,
Satish, can we quickly run through the next two?
So this is the second. I'm launching it. Yeah, please participate.
This is more interesting.
So the question is, considering the Thatte was the very same person who totally rejected Rao but mentored Lobo, would you like to have a boss like Mr. Vinod Thatte?
Okay, it's around 50-50.
Great, very interesting, very interesting,
Yeah.
very interesting results are emerging.
So this is the result.
Wait, another 10, we'll wait and then we'll go ahead. Okay, we can end the poll now.
So this is the result.
Please announce the results, Satish. How many say yes and how many say no?
So 44% for yes and 45% for no.
Okay.
So almost 1:1 and said yes and no.
Yeah, 1. So let's move to the poll number 3, the last one. I'm launching it. Yeah, please participate.
The question is, in his new company, Rao conceded that compared to his peers, he felt he was an illiterate. What are the new skills which Rao should learn? There are 3 skills which we have mentioned. Please choose the top one which comes to your mind.
Yes, we request everyone to participate. Really, really important question. This is.
Wow. More than 150 have already responded.
Yeah. So I'm ending the poll and showing you the result. Here is the result. So the third option, take a course on EI, emotional intelligence, is winning by far much votes.
Almost 80% have said he should work on his emotional intelligence and he should take a course on developing EQ.
Yeah. So I'm just stopping the sharing and now we'll move to the
pre-discussion poll results.
Yeah.
So dear participants, we also ran this poll before we held this event and before you heard the esteemed panelist on different perspectives of this case study. Satish, you will have to show the results.
Yes, I'm just showing.
This was happening pre-session. There is quite a change that we notice.
Yeah, so I'm showing the first one.
So earlier we had 68.1% of people saying that Rao's feelings that he was better qualified reflected in his body language, and that made Vinod Thatte uncomfortable and antagonistic towards Rao. Earlier we had 68%, now 80% say yes. The second question, would you like to have a boss like Mr. Thatte? Earlier we had 40% saying no and 37% saying yes. Now it's equal, almost equal.
Yeah.
44.
Now it is almost, yeah, 45 and 44. Yeah.
So some perception change there towards Mr. Vinod. And the third, which skill? Well, we have almost similar results, more towards EI, going towards EI, learning EI, 65 earlier and 80% now. I would rather say, sir, we should have a curriculum which has a topic, how to manage your ego, which comes with your, because in this case study also, I don't know what was blinding the Mr. Rao. Was it his ego that I am better qualified? I will not have a discussion, open discussion with my manager who is lesser qualified than him. Why do we get degrees and get that ego along with those degrees? So degrees,
in fact, this is a very, very interesting thing, what you have done. And it came from Soshin Bodawala who suggested this. And this is just like, to me, an opinion poll before the election and the actual poll results after the election. What is the difference? Something akin to that.
Some more people are decisive about it actually. So while you have similar numbers actually for the second question, I think only 10 people are now can't say actually. So 10% we cannot say. So we've been able to at least move a needle in terms of making decisions, but not exactly.
Absolutely.
So, but my question, this is there, Shashan sir, why don't we incorporate in curriculum this topic, how to manage your ego?
Yeah. So,
this is to HRs also, means most of the top institutes that give you a degree of MBA, executive MBA, but why don't they incorporate how to manage your ego when you get into any role for that matter?
Yeah, so that is correct. And there are two HR experts over here who can also answer one more question. And that is that while we look out for candidates, we look out for people who manage relationships with their team, even at times with their peers. Okay, and we give a lot of weightage to that. But possibly the managing relationship with a boss is not as much of a thought which is given. So typically, boss is a part of the hiring process, but I'm saying this is more passively managed than the other one, which is actively looked out for.
Swati, can I come in?
Yes, sir, please.
So you're very right. And so while there are courses in terms of knowing yourself better everything, but recently in one of the conversation, my wife actually taught me a new word, and that is called ambitious. So, and it's how you as a leader or as a team member, how you remain grounded to earth, being humble, and then how you also be ambitious. Because sometimes while you are ambitious and when you start driving things, you let go of your respect for people inadvertently by mistake or something. But if you are humble, if you are rooted to your roots, grounded to your roots, you are grounded at a plain level, in your term, not having any egos. You also are knowing your own vulnerability, that maybe you'll make mistake as a leader, and it's okay. And if a team member makes mistakes, it's okay, we learn together. And yet remain ambitious. Yet do not let go of your objectives, chase your deadlines, help people to succeed, help self to succeed. So that's a combination of this word, and I was very happy to learn it. And I think it's possibly a word which many leaders and many people should start working on, being humble but not let go of ambition. And if you fuse this together, it works very well. So all credit to my wife. I didn't invent it. She read it somewhere and she will share it. But I thought I'll pass it along.
Thank you.
That's a beautiful terminology you have introduced, ambitious. My God, Dr. Swati. Wonderful. I've learned
Thank
something
you.
very new today.
Let me say thank you to Mrs. Bhatt also, if she is hearing. Thank you, ma'am. And Ajay sir, Ajay Veshampyam sir,
Yeah.
is there a need in the curriculum to integrate something related to this? This goes off the mind from every curriculum, I think.
See, when you talk about how to manage ego, right? This particular term, if you really see that, then which starts from our childhood itself, because a small child would also have an ego. When he grown up being a young, he also would have ego. When he get married and being a parent, also would have ego. And when he get veteran, he also would have ego. But the degree of change in ego change time to time, right? And when you talk about, if we put this particular subject in curriculum, then every individual first need to understand where to put that a word called ego when he is managing the relationship, because some point of time that is required also, and some point of time that you need to let go also. So that balance, that individual need to be taught for if you ask for my submission, and we miss that balance. And that's why such kind of, I would say, when we discussed since last 1 hour about the case study, the issues between Mr. Rao and Mr. Thatte can occur. So balancing approach for any individual plays a vital role. Either he is managing with his children's, either he is managing with his family, either he is managing with his peers, subordinates, and to the bosses. So if he able to understand this managing the ego part, which is generally by experience people learned, rather than putting into the curriculum. And today's subject was such an apt subject where everyone has faced this journey. Everyone might be experiencing such kind of act in their existing career also, in past career also. So ego term, when you talk about, is very apt, and which is we are experiencing since generation. Definitely it has to be part of curriculum, somewhere it need to be taught, and that can help a people for future also. That's my take on this.
Great.
Thank you, Mr. Ajay. I will quickly take few questions from the audience because they have been here silently listening to the discussions. Let me take a question. How to address, this is coming from Mr. Manoj Kumar Saha, how to address when one idea taken by boss seems to be not good enough, but had to accept by compulsion. This is tough.
Manoj, can you come in the front and repeat this question and exactly what you're meaning by this, Manoj?
So the question, I'll repeat also, if he is coming, then it's good. How to address when one idea taken by boss seems to be not good enough, but we have to accept by compulsion. What to do in that scenario?
Okay, so probably what he's saying is that whatever the boss says, we have to accept, even if it's not a good idea, right?
So let me use his words again, actually, and I'm saying seems to be not good enough. Okay, he doesn't really know. Okay, first and foremost, and I would always say that before junking any idea, actually, one should experiment or try it. And if you have any reservations, actually, talk to the boss to try and understand. Without experimenting, without trying anything new, actually, having a perception that it is not a great idea is also not a good one. Okay, to start with.
Thank you, Mr. Sachin. Almost many questions we have already answered in our discussions, so I'm quickly browsing them through them.
Dr. Swati, why don't we ask the participants to open the platform? Let's have 1 or 2 discussions, quick discussions.
Sure.
And
we have to end it by 1 o'clock, otherwise that would be far exceeding our time.
Yes, sure, sir. Sure, sir. So since in this discussion is so interesting, that's why.
Dear participants, we are opening the forum. Please take your name and put the questions. and be short and brief when you
Mr. Thawasumani, you have raised the hand. You can unmute and just ask the question.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon to all of you, sir. My question is that while going through this case study, sir, the problem is with one subordinate and one boss. In case if I am having the problem with my boss for longer period, definitely I can go for one more hierarchy, sir, in order to resolve certain issues. So, what is a panel opinion on this?
Before the panel comes, I would like to make a small intervention here. Probably the HR should be first approached. HR, you should not make HR as a passive spectator here. HR has a very, very, very important role in this. This is my take.
Achapat sir, would you like to respond?
Yeah, sure. So let me rephrase the question. I think the question, the comment, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, yeah.
We'll request the participants to keep yourself on mute. Only who is asking the question can unmute and ask.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah, I think the participant was saying that shouldn't he approach the skip level manager? So that's what the question was, the next level manager. So, Mr. Atangadi suggested that he should go to HR. See, many organizations have a practice of skip level meeting, which is purposefully done so that the different point of view of subordinates team members sometimes comes above the level, and then there is open, and that way the culture improves. Many organizations, progressive organizations, keeps on doing this. I would still recommend that going to skip level or going to HR, whatever is your choice. My request to that participant is that you should always inform your manager also that if you are going to go to a different person. So that is your onus to keep on building the trust. He may agree or disagree, that's a different thing. But as a good team member, if you have a disagreement, unless what your manager is doing is unethical, code of conduct violation, where the organizations already have ombudsperson or ethics committee, that's a different thing. But in normal circumstances, if you choose to disagree and you have a discord with your manager, inform him. Then go to HR or go to a skip level manager, whatever you choose, based on your organization culture, practices, correct? But the element would never, at any point of time, surprise people. And this virtue will also help you to later on, being as a leader, to keep your team member also informed candidly if you feel that they are not doing well or they need some coaching. So it's always a two-way process. What you implement as a team member, you will come to implement as a team leader. It comes with you. So if you have to be a better team leader, start having a transparency. Talk to your manager. Say, look, what you're saying is not acceptable for 1, 2, 3, 4 reasons. If you are able to solve it, fine. Or say, I may need to approach the skip level manager or HR. Thank you.
Wow. Great question and very wonderfully answered by Mr. Raja. I hope we have been clear. Next question, Dr. Amit Bhagra, you want to ask question? Please unmute and ask.
Hi, good afternoon, and thanks to all the panelists for giving such wonderful knowledge and advice. I just wanted to highlight one more thing which could help in resolution of such problems. The two things that both the Ajays mentioned, that phrase, but it got lost later on. Organizational objectives. Every employee should realize, every employee in any function has the capability and the willingness to do multiple activities. Now, some of these activities are very well aligned to the organizational objectives. Some are not. And those that are not are usually unwelcome by the boss. Now, there the perception problem comes. I will start feeling, oh, I am not being appreciated for these wonderful activities that I'm doing, but they're not aligned to the organizational objective. So every employee should realize that while one is capable of doing 100 activities, only 50 of them might be aligned to the organizational objective. And one should focus only on that and let go of the other 50. Now there, once again, the point that Dr. Swati highlighted, the ego factor, that also needs to be managed by the employee. That look, these activities, I'm good at it, but they're not required by the organization. Let me just put it aside. So that's once again, so keeping in short, having a perspective of what activities are required by the organization. If we stick to that, most of the bosses will not have a problem, and most of the organizations will also not have a problem. And the second thing is, it's all about rapport building. I mean, whether it's an MD of a company or a president or a vice president or whatever, everyone has a certain need when they're interacting with a certain employee. And the employee also has a need. And if the conversation happens in a manner where both feel that they are being recognized and their needs are going to be met, I really don't think any of these kind of problems will come up. Thank you. Just an input.
Thank you, Dr. Amit, for the nice inputs. Mr. Sanjoy Das, would you like to ask? We'll close this session within 5 minutes now. Please be brief.
Yes. Respectable panel, just I want to know, after giving my ownership to my job and after giving excellent results, getting verbal appreciation only from my all bosses up to head office level. But when it comes about the next promotion, the laziest employee in my company, my colleague, get promotion due to corporate politics. What should I do? As he is senior in my age only. So should I change the organization or should I change anything else?
Shashin sir, would you like to field this one?
So let me first say that this case study is not the end all, okay, and it is not comprehensive to cover every aspect of what we face on a day-to-day within our organizations. Okay, so there is a small part of that actually is managing a relationship in between an employee and his boss, or maybe that is the aspect which we try to cover. Now, within this, Mr. Das, if you have a challenge in terms of managing our relationship in between you and your manager, then I think you can look at what are the aspects which were discussed during the course of this 1 hour. And if you believe that that helps you to address a relationship with your manager better, and that may change the course of your career, then it is fine enough. However, the rest aspects actually within the organization, if there are challenges where you believe that you are getting a lot of praise and a lot of pats on the back, and when it is a role actually for a higher responsibility somebody else is considered, then I think it would be good to discuss with your manager as well as HR actually, because every role has a competency mapping and a requirement in terms of capability. So while you are currently carrying out your role in an extremely capable manner and delivering results maybe better than what the organization expects, but the next role actually where you are seeking or wanting higher responsibility, there might be a gap in terms of what your individual capabilities are and what the organization sees or what your manager sees. And it is worthwhile for you to discuss this with your manager as well as HR, which can lay out an individual development plan actually, which is time bound. You take those actions which are there, and accordingly they can future actually consider you for the better role.
Very well said, Sachin. Very well said. Very well said.
Thank you, Mr. Sachin, for a perfect answer. Let me take this last question from Mr. Aarti Bhadraj. Ms. Aarti, yeah, please.
Yeah. Hi, Swati. And first of all, thank you, panelists, for arranging very interesting session for all of us. Though you all are very right that listening to manager is very important, and EQ quotient is also very important. Transparency and collaborative approach should be there, because ultimately we are working for a single goal, organizational goal. One thing I just want to understand your perspective about that I found that one thing was missing. There was a feedback mechanism in terms of from boss to the employee, as well as reverse feedback mechanism from employee to the boss. Because if that could have happened, the situation I feel was not the similar which was actually happening, and he left. So what is your opinion on that?
Mr. Ajay Vaishampayam, this question goes to you.
Yeah, what I heard, Aarti, was that feedback mechanism. You rightly nailed the point. Basically, many of the progressive organization has a real right feedback mechanism process in place. out of which they build a culture, because seeking a feedback is also very, very important for any individual, right? And giving a feedback also equally important when you are giving a feedback to a boss and when you are seeking a feedback from your subordinates. I completely agree with you that if that mechanism would have been placed in this particular case study, the things would have been different. But that robust system need to be actually executed in a right manner. And as a progressive organization that follows rigorously and they see the different results and different culture. But if we miss that bus as far as robustness is concerned, then such kind of things can occur where you have not given a feedback, neither I have seek a feedback. So definitely feedback mechanism plays a vital role. And even though if your boss is not giving you a feedback, then go and ask for it. It would definitely help it for you to build a right career, the right culture in the department, and way forward for yourself. That's what my take on this.
In fact, that's a very, very interesting point you have made, and a very interesting question by Aarti. And that makes me think some other times what we should have a program on feed forward. Thank you. Now the time is almost up.
Thank you, Vivek sir. Noted. And just one last comment I'll take from Mr. Tavinder Jeet Singh Vasudeva from Micro Labs. Tavinder sir, please unmute and give us your perspective.
No, I just heard Sujay's question on promotion, somebody getting promotion ahead of him in spite of performance and all that. I have also spent a few decades, and we often get disappointed, especially in a culture where we have been always growing up with complexity of why he and why I'm not I. So that is the thing one has to wait. And if the organization is a growing organization, I'm sure there will be a lot of opportunities. If miss the bus this particular occasion, it doesn't mean that you are sidelined or you are not potential for being considered for the next time. Because even changing the organization, moving to another organization, again, you will have one promotion. But again, you have to compete for the next level with the mass available in the other organization. So my experience has been that if I have stayed in an organization for a longer period of time, maybe that day or year I did not get a promotion, I always waited for the next year. And I've been lucky. So I just wanted to put my experience for the young boy Sujay who just asked this question. Thank you.
Thank you, Davinder sir. And first of all, thank you, Mr. Ajay Bhatt, Mr. Sachin Budawala, and Mr. Ajay Vaishampyam for giving us half more hour from your busy schedules on a Sunday. I'm really, sorry if that is causing any problem to your schedule, but I really thank you from the bottom of my heart that you stayed and answered the question and took a complete, this made this a fabulous session. We are getting a lot of responses for this session. Thank you so much. Thank you, Vivek sir, and thank you, dear participants, for interacting this time a lot. We couldn't take all the questions, but we will try to take them in the WhatsApp group. So that is why we create WhatsApp groups for continuous communication. Send us your questions. We will get that feedback and try to create some courses, some sessions on those which are of importance to the majority. Thank you all for joining us in time. Thank you, panelists, for giving us insights. These are the insights which we are always eager to learn from in any session, and you gave a lot of insights. This session is being recorded and kept at Facebook and LinkedIn. If anyone wishes to see it again, it is there at Pharma State Academy pages forever. So if you want to go back and revise this or send it to someone else, you can do that and get the insights. Make it a case study of a case study discussion. Make it a case study in your organization of a case study discussion. Thank you, sirs, and thank you all.
Thank you. So to end the session, I have posted a feedback form in the chat box. So what you can do, you can end when we end the session, you can just click on the feedback form, fill it, and let us know how did we perform so that we make it better next time. Thank you, everyone, for attending.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. Thank you, Mr. Sachin. Thank you, Mr. Ajay. Thank you, Vivek.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, all the participants.
Thank you,
Really,
everyone.
really grateful for all the love and affection you show to our sessions. Please keep coming and discussing here.
Yeah.
Thank you,
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a beautiful day, and we are ending the session now.